Yar me arties, how ya be? Today I'm going to be teaching you how to be a good engineer. First off, I'm just going to run through all the tools, then what to consider, and then a few strategies. Alright, so we're going to get started in 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, rightio. Okay then, let's try and get through this as quickly as possible. First off, this is my build that I like to go with. So let's just go through the tools really quickly. So we've got the mallet. Basically, it repairs things really quickly. If I'll do this for people who may even just be starting, save a damaged system, hit it. It repairs everything a lot, actually, except for the balloon. It's almost an instant repair, really. Then you've got the wrench. Now that's for rebuilding things like this. If that was really fast. I think someone was just helping me, but basically it rebuilds things. So once they're destroyed, it'll rebuild things super quickly. Thing with the mallet is that you need at least one mallet on your team to repair things. That's a very straightforward thing to know, really. The wrench, if you don't come in with a wrench, you're going to be screwed. Like, getting your hull up and your balloon up is pretty much impossible to do in time without the wrench. You're going to be crashed into the ground without the wrench. So yeah, pretty straightforward. The fire extinguisher. Now, the difference between the fire extinguisher and the chemical spray is that the chemical spray removes 3 layers of fire. So if we set the ship on fire, we can have a look. And the fire extinguisher, which I have here, will leave all of them. So if we have a look at this, it has 16 layers of fire on it, right? By that indicator there. So obviously the chemical spray is not going to be effective enough to put out a fire. Whereas that just does it straight up. So that's why... So that's those things. Now, with engineers, on our team, we tend to have 2 engineers. We have a primary engineer and a secondary engineer, so that now we're crashing to the ground. Now, the way we try to do it is our primary engineer will have the mallet, the wrench, and the fire extinguisher. So basically, everything you need to keep the ship running. Everything that's incredibly important. Now, the second engineer will have the... Well, it's really up to them what they have in between the wrench and the mallet and what your team really needs. We tend to not break our stuff all the way a lot, so the mallet is what we choose for our secondary engineer, but it really comes down to how you play, how close you get, whether you ram or not. The secondary engineer can have a chemical spray. We prefer not to use it, but there are a lot of strategies that make very good use of the chemical spray. It basically, once it's sprayed on something and you get another ship that comes by, and when ships get close to each other, the flamethrower is really what they go for. So it does get really useful. It's just our general choice to go with the flamethrower instead. And the buff hammer. The buff hammer is a definitely must-have for the secondary engineer, but don't ever prioritize it over these 3. It'll buff your systems. It is very useful. Oh, hang on. Anyway, it is very useful for things such as the hull and the guns, especially the flamethrower. Hang on 2 seconds. So yeah, the game does have a few weird things going on with it at the moment, but it is still developing. It's really nice to see. But anyway, back to engineering. So we have the buff hammer. So yeah, it is very useful when it comes to weapons and the hull armor. With the engines, it doesn't seem to have as big of a buff as I would like it to have. Usually you just use moonshine, I believe it is, to just, well, get away, really. It does come in handy, but it's okay. The balloon isn't really that useful unless you've just repaired it. But if you're just repairing your balloon, you're probably going to have a lot more damage than have time to use the buff hammer, if you know what I mean. But it's really up to you. Now, when it comes down to the special equipments, well, I use this one, but we only really have one person with it. We've practiced with a lot of different things. They're not really as useful as you would hope, the items that you can get in your special slot. I hope that given time, there'll be a lot more to them. We were experimenting with the binoculars at one point, but they really don't come in handy, to be honest, with the engineer. They really don't. But it it depends on what strategy you have. I haven't seen every single strategy in the game, but from what I've seen, they're really not that useful to have. Anyway, so what to consider when you're being an engineer. First off, one of the biggest concerns of being an engineer is your ability to know where all the other ships are and where your ship is in compared to them. Like, so when we're engineering, we'll be running around fixing things constantly. We really like to get in there close with our guns. So it's very, very easy to not know when ships are coming around from different directions. So when you have a strategy like we do, where we like to have our engineers, so we'll have one engineer up there to fix all that stuff and one engineer down here, and our gunner will run between. But we'll need to jump in our guns. Say I'll need to jump on the flamethrower when they get to the side, and Tam will need to jump on. Okay, this isn't our loadout, but there's another gun up there that we jump on. And I've glitched out of the world again. I've been having a few problems with the server today. Hang on. But yeah, so you're really, really going to need your captain to be telling you when you need to jump on the guns. So you need to make sure that your captain knows that he needs to be telling you that. And if you're a captain, you really do need to be telling your engineers when guns need to be armed, and occasionally, well, you shouldn't need to tell them when things are on fire and stuff. We tend to know really well, but when you're first starting off the game, you should really... Really? Hang on. Okay, yeah, I don't actually know what was going on there, but I give him a bit of leeway with that. Anyway, so yeah, if you're a new engineer, you're obviously going to miss a few things, like when things are on fire and whatnot. So it's I wouldn't leave it to your captain, but your captain definitely has a responsibility of telling you when to jump on guns and things like that. With the buff hammer, another tip is that a bar will come up on the left side of the circle thing you're at, and it'll fill up to there, and then it'll buff it, and it'll count down. Now, one thing you need to do is you need to buff it to almost the top and leave it, and do that to everything when you're out of combat. So when you need to get, say, a quick getaway, you bang, 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 done. Or if you're about to take a lot of damage, just one hit, bang, done. With the guns, one hit, bang, ready to fire off the bow. It's a simple one, but it's one a few people seem to miss. When you're repairing things, here's a good one. I've had a few people I've tried to teach. What they do is they sit here and they'll just keep hitting until it recharges again. What you need to do is you need to hit 1, hit 2, hit 3, and then, you know, keep going like that. You can't just sit at 1 because it just wastes time. One really good example of this is up on the balloon. It takes a very, very, very long time for the cooldown on the balloon. You even have enough time to hit the balloon, maybe fix a turret, jump down here, fix the hull, and then run back up again, and it'll still be recooling. So keep that in mind when you're being an engineer. One thing for crew members that aren't engineers, especially, there's one thing people do. There's one thing that people do, and it really, really can get annoying, is when, say, something... Thank you, crew member. When something is on fire, they'll say, hit it with the mallet. Now, if you hit it with the mallet, when it... Okay, here we go. So if you hit it with a mallet, right? Now there's a recharge sequence. So the engineer can't actually put it out until it's been repaired. And that really slows everything down a lot. It takes up a lot of time. Obviously, if you have something, say the hull, and it's on fire and really, really close to the bottom, and you hit it with a mallet, then it's good, because it puts off the destruction of the hull for a little bit longer, and the engineer can come back to it. But when something's at, say, half health, you really need to leave it to the engineer to put it out before you start trying to repair it, otherwise it tends to slow things down a lot. Next is, when you have engineers, we like to have 2. 2 is really an optimal combination. Okay, we've crashed out again. As I was saying, 2 is a really, really optimal combination, because the 2 gunners doesn't really have much of an advantage, we've found. because the buffs that you get as a gunner can be applied to any of the guns with anyone else manning them. So it since the engineers can man a gun anyway, it just doesn't really have much of a benefit for us. But maybe someone else has found a way that it does. But for us, we really just go with 2 engineers. But we like to keep evenly spread. So one person will be up there ready to hit the balloons and the front guns, and one person will be down here with the engines, the hull, and these 2 guns. Most of the time, the person up there will need to jump down and help the engineer out down here. But having one up there really does help out with a lot of the repairs, especially when they can just jump off and come down here anyway, whereas getting from, say, the hull to the balloon is a very, very long process. So keep that in mind. Make sure your engineers are spread nicely across the ship and not just in one place. When another ship is coming in really close, the most popular strategy seems to be burning. Now, it is also a very effective strategy. Really? Okay, 2 seconds. Okay, where was I? Alright, so the popular and very, very effective system is to have flamethrowers when you're close. So when a ship comes in from a direction, make sure you have both engineers down in that section if they're not priorly occupied. Obviously, you need to take all of these strategies with a grain of salt. Obviously, everything can be modified a little bit. You should never go in with a hard plan, just a soft plan to nice work off of. Now, when the fire one comes in, you really need to be ready to put things out. You need to be ready for it, so you take the least damage as possible, which leaves a lot more damage to be taken by their guns before you're out of business, especially with the engines. If you need to get a tight getaway afterwards, it's very important to have them ready. When they're further away, when you have no ships near you, it is important to keep spread out across the ship, as I priorly said. Now, almost done. 2 seconds, guys. Okay, now this is honestly really weird. Occasionally these servers seem to spasm out a little bit. You get a lot of really dodgy stuff. But I can understand. It does seem like the game is still undergoing a few changes. It usually is pretty good. Okay, so where were we? Priorities. Now, priorities really, 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 really need to be taken with a grain of salt. But there is a lot of general rules that you follow. For example, the balloon is a very, very, very high priority, and the hull is a very, very high priority. But occasionally you'll find situations where the guns are actually a higher priority than the hull. You see, if we're in a situation where, for example, we have more flamethrowers than them on one side, usually we have 2. What we actually do is we need to keep the gunners up more than we need the hull up, because when the ship passes, we have taken out all of their guns by the time it's passed, so there's no need to have the hull repaired. Whereas in a situation where we were outgunned, then obviously we would need the engines and the hull more repaired, because we'll be taking full fire. So you really need to sort of think about what's going on and make decisions accordingly. But there's some pretty good guidelines. If it really depends on your play strategy, you'll find different ways and how different ways affect how the situation goes. But we really highly prioritize the balloon, because having the balloon down for too long is a massive, massive penalty on the hull and your location. You can get, people can come around the left side really, really easily, and it happens a lot. So you really need to prioritize that. The hull is very important if you're taking damage, but again, sometimes the guns are actually a higher priority if you're taking out their guns. The engines aren't really that much of a priority. As long as you have one up, you can still turn and get your guns around to bear. But don't completely forget about them. They are important systems. They're just not the most important. Okay, well, I'm being kicked, but that's pretty much the end of it. So thank you very much, guys. This is all that I can think of at the moment. Happy gaming. I hope to see you in game. Have a great day. See ya.